members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Matthew Yankoviak, and I appear before you as a subject matter expert in school-based law enforcement and in the investigation of sexual assault of children and exploitation of children. But I also appear before you today as something more personal, as I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. For more than 2 decades, I have dedicated my professional life to protecting children. I currently serve as the police chief and director of public safety for Newman International Academy, a charter school in North Texas, overseeing the safety and security of 3,000 students across 11 campuses in 5 Texas cities. I also lead a private consulting firm where we specialize in campus vulnerability assessments for schools, churches, and community organizations, and conduct highly sensitive investigations into sexual assault and crisis response for them. Over my past 9 years, I've served specifically in school-based law enforcement, both as a school resource officer and a school-based law enforcement leader. My career has taken me through cities like Dallas as a police officer, medium-sized city in Oklahoma called Moore, and smaller communities like Oak Ridge, Texas, prior to serving in my current capacity as a school district police chief. I've seen firsthand how safety challenges and resources vary dramatically region by region, and I've worked to develop strategies tailored to each of those unique environments. In addition to my school-based service, I've served as a police detective, special deputy U.S. Marshal, and a task force officer with Homeland Security on major cases like exploitation of children. I was a co-case agent on one of the largest multi-jurisdiction human trafficking cases in U.S. history, an operation that spanned 16 jurisdictions across the United States, where we found justice for 950 sexual assault victims. I hold 3 board certifications, including management, investigations, and physical security. Fewer than 500 security professionals in the United States and globally hold all 3 of those. I'm also a Texas Master Peace Officer through TCOL and certified school-based law enforcement officer. But beyond my background there, I'd like to speak to you about a deeper perspective because I am not just an investigator, but a survivor of child sexual abuse. As a child, I endured repeated aggravated sexual assault and trauma, which was compounded by the silence of the adults that were charged to protect me and the laws that failed to protect me, not just in the courtrooms, but in the classrooms. That legislation that you're working on deeply matters to me. It addresses structural, operational, and policy gaps that have left children vulnerable far too long. This bill clarifies roles of training and school-based law enforcement officer. However, there are many gaps. It also gives schools the tools to prevent child grooming, sexual abuse, and inappropriate relationships between educators and students. This provides accountability mechanisms that need to be there to prevent crimes, but not just respond to them. Finally, I would ask for 3 things of you. First, that there must be tangible consequences for school officials and districts who fail to act. This must include not only institutional liability, but personal accountability through administrative sanctions on their credentials, meaningful financial penalties to both the institution and individuals, and when warranted, criminal prosecution. Second, I ask that you make sure that that this legislation is rooted in prevention. That prevention includes both training and practices that involve ongoing trauma-informed care for the victims, initially when it happens, through adjudication, and well beyond. Your CACs, Child Advocacy Centers, can be the source of that with additional funding there. Finally, we must close statutory conflicts and loopholes that allow abuse to hide in plain sight within our education systems. This law must equally apply to public ISDs, public charter schools, private schools, and a new rising trend, homeschool co-ops. Oversight must be independent and rooted in law enforcement that is outside of municipal police departments, outside TEA, and outside the local education agency. I believe there must be an independent Inspector General's office tasked to address this epidemic plaguing our schools. Investigations must not only focus on the abuse itself, but the process failures, cover-ups, witness tampering, and destruction of evidence that I've seen in recent cases that made the news in North Texas my agency has been involved in. This bill is more than a legal matter. It is a moral mandate. Through my experiences investigating child sex crimes, leading campus safety programs, and helping state-level school officials with legislation, I've been honored to be a voice for children who have none. I have held the hands of these victims and have witnessed the systemic failures across large and small school districts. Today, I speak to you both as a law enforcement professional and a person whose life was forever changed by individuals failing to act to protect me. I urge this committee to lead decisively to protect our children, fix this broken system. Thank you for your time. and I'm open for questions if you have any for me.
Right. So recently, you've seen an uptick in the destruction of records. Okay. Over what period of time? I'm curious.
So we're currently involved in an investigation right now that involves 3 educators at the same campus. One of those educators has been employed all the way back to 1993. In that private institution, there was allegations against him for sexual contact with students, and they gave him the option to transfer without investigation and resign. He then went to a large school district, an ISD in the DFW area, where he again made sexual contact with a student, female, that was 16.
Sure.
And I read that the district did not want to allow us access to his records, even though we were a law enforcement agency. They required me to go get a court order.
Which district was this?
Fort Worth ISD, sir.
Could you say it again? Fort Worth.
Fort Worth ISD, sir.
Did not want you to have access to records, even though you're a law enforcement agency investigating a crime.
That is correct, sir. We went to a judge in Tarrant County, a criminal district court judge, and I acquired a search warrant for those records. When I got those records, the line on that record said, allowed to resign in lieu of further investigation.
And what year was this?
This is a current ongoing investigation.
So you got this court order in 2024 then?
I got this court order 4 weeks ago, sir.
4 weeks ago. So I'm hoping that the current superintendent and the board of Fort Worth ISD is listening to me, because this isn't the first problem we've had with Fort Worth ISD. So you're telling me as of 1 month ago, the current Fort Worth superintendent and apparently their board is letting this happen, was not going to give you a law enforcement agency information about an ongoing investigation into sexual assault or harassment.
So under sworn testimony, I can tell you that Fort Worth ISD failed to cooperate with my investigation into failure to report as well as sexual contact with a student. That educator went through a background check, which, by the way, I hope the panel understands a background check is worthless if the information is not provided to the state or the federal government.
Right, because then you don't end up on
It's
the
not in there.
hire
So-
registry, et cetera, right?
And Senator, I had to get the FBI involved.
Wow.
So I went to FBI agent White. I reached out to her because my agency is, quote, small. And so the FBI went with us to serve the search warrant. And once we revealed that we had the federal government with us, we received cooperation. And interesting enough, the records we were looking for, they didn't have to search a building for them. They had them for us. But they did not want to cooperate. And here's the problem. This is just one. I could continue if you'd like.
Well, I'd love to know every school district that has pulled this trick recently.
Yeah, and I would just tell you, my superintendent, who supports me being here today, is hands off when we investigate this. So this isn't the first case we've had in our district. We put the safety of children over the reputation of our institution at all turns. And we fight for victims, and we bring light to them. And the reality of it is that these incidences occurred all the way back to 1993 in 2 separate institutions, one private and one ISD, covered up in this one violator, which gave him access to more students. We have 11 victims that have come forward after a press conference regarding that one suspect. We have 5 states worth of victims now that have come forward because it hit the internet, the press conference, and we have 5 victims in 5 different states that are also have come forward on 2 of the educators.
Well,
In both cases, Senator, we could have prevented this if there was oversight.
and I have no problem if we need to actually subpoena somebody to make that motion when you need it in this committee.
Mr. Senator, sir, just so you know, they don't cooperate with subpoenas. It has to be court orders.
I know, but this is a way for us to get
Yes, sir.
into that specifically.
It'll be very clear to the great state of Texas if a school district refuses to cooperate with the Senate Committee on Education on a subpoena. I'll guarantee you that.
When you look at oversight, just to add one thing to my testimony, I think it's important to understand that I'm not opposed to, obviously I work in a school district as a police chief. The reason I'm for an independent inspector general is so that a police chief like me, if my superintendent wasn't amazing, I would have a recourse outside my school district. And so I'm dear friends with many, many police chiefs, even Dallas ISD and other large ones, where law enforcement absolutely is handcuffed by the school district and their oversight. I hear it all the time. I always hear how blessed I am that I am in the school district, but apart from the school district. By the way, Newman manages our police department. So I believe you've got to look at the fact that it's not just a superintendent issue. It's not a school class. I'm not here advocating for or against public schools, private schools, charter schools. I'm advocating for children.
It's a leadership issue.
It's a leadership
And
issue.
I don't care what school district we're talking about.
For self-serving, outside of any self-serving answers, which I don't believe you would give anyway,
No, sir.
why do school districts have their own police departments? And how do you separate the control that a school district, including elected board members, have over the influence of investigations with an internal police department separate from outside sheriff's departments and the local municipality that is not under the control and paid by the school district itself? You get where I'm going with
I know exactly where you're going with
So-
Senator, and if I may, I think you have to understand, first off, every school board member is not elected. And that may be shocking to you, but many school boards are appointed by the superintendent that oversees the superintendent.
Oh, wow.
Let me say that again. I want to be clear with what I just said. Many school district superintendents appoint the board that sits over top of them and replaces them at will when they want to, which is not oversight. As for my role as a police chief, I don't need to be a police chief. When I took the job, I told my boss I could walk at any moment because we put ourselves in a finance position so I could leave if I was ever compromised. And so I had set the groundwork very clear with my boss. But as you look at interference and the roles of it, starts with good memorandums of understanding between the law enforcement entities. I think if you looked at making it mandatory for the superintendent and/or a local police chief to report those crimes to a district attorney's office, you do begin to remove some of the old brother type stuff that goes on in certain parts of our state. As for interference, I will tell you that when I first got there, I was concerned with the first investigation involving an inappropriate relationship because I wasn't sure how it was going to go because it was a beloved athletic director of our school district who was very close to my superintendent. And I went to her and I just told her, I said, here's the deal. This is going to go one of two ways. Either we're going to do this right down the middle and find truth and prosecute if need be, or we're not. The problem is that if I'm at will, which I am as a police chief, to my elected official in theory, which they're not elected, there is no independence. And that's where they get you. That's where they interfere. And that's why I really believe you have to have somebody outside the education space. And I've only been in the education space nine years, so by no means am I an education expert. But in protecting kids, I can tell you that there's a lot more good old boy stuff going on in education in Texas than I've seen in law enforcement.
So stay narrow on the answer, not broad.
Okay, so narrow is if I'm given a case and the superintendent has actual authority over me in that case, then I'm not going to work the case. But if I have the protections that I can go around my superintendent to an independent inspector general and file a charge on her and have protections under the Whistleblower Act of Texas, then as a police chief, I'll dig my heels in.
Yeah, but you just testified earlier that ethics take you beyond the institution and always to the protection of the students. So
100%,
how would you not go beyond and around
I would.
in any instruction? I feel like you would.
Oh, I 100% would, but I can tell you my counterpart, I've seen good police chiefs
Yeah.
quit and resign because they were put into compromising situations. And you have to realize it goes beyond just that job, as I'm sure you understand, Senator, is if I leave, how I leave matters. And if I want to be able to get another job as a police chief, whether it be municipality or a school district, I better leave like a good boy and keep my mouth shut, or I'm not employable. And this is one of the issues out. Now, for me, I don't really care. I'm going to do what's right for kids. Partly because what I went through as a child, candidly. I'm going to be a voice no matter what. I literally flew down here as quick as I could today because I wanted you to hear from a police chief in the trenches that it's hard. And you can write laws that solve this problem if you put things in place to equip me. A law without both criminal and credentialing penalties, I'm just going to tell you, in the field, it's going to be really difficult for me to be able to do my job and protect kids.
Well, I think these authors of these different pieces of legislation could really benefit from leaning on you for input and our other witnesses that are here with us today. It's been excellent, not just your professional opinion, but also the trauma you experienced growing up, and I just really appreciate you being here to tell that story. Senator Menendez.
You just mentioned that some of these board members in these institutions are appointed by the superintendents, therefore there's not a lot of oversight. But I mean, I'm a little confused. All of these institutions you must be referring to, must be private institutions.
No, sir, they're public charter schools.
Public charter schools where the boards are appointed.
Many of the boards in public charter schools are appointed, not elected.
That's what I needed to know. And so at any institution where the board is appointed, you find there could be a potential conflict.
100%. I also find that in the public institutions where the boards are corruptible, there's a chance for that as well. I don't think it's a single institution type. Mm-hmm. Private schools are in the same boat as where the people that are overseeing the headmaster or headmistress are appointed typically as well, not elected. And the danger in the co-ops and the danger in the private schools is there's state funding. And this is why I say that you have to have a mechanism to issue them a teaching credential and then revoke it so they're unemployable, as well as hit them with fines individually, and have teeth in a bill that hits the institution, no matter of its type, through an administrative fine. Going after a credential is great. That stops them in this singular action. In law enforcement, a change has happened recently where, as a police chief, if I have misconduct, starting in June, I must report misconduct of my officers to the state. There is a database nationally that lists police officers that are considered to be at risk for employment. I would challenge lawmakers to come up with something like this for educators. I come from a family of educators. My wife, my mother-in-law, one of my daughters are all educators. My son wants to be. My wife's trying to talk him out of it because of the complexities and the lack of protection. I hope that answered your question, Senator.
It did very well. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have Office of Inspector General bills coming before this committee that Vice Chair Campbell, Senator Parker, and Senator Middleton are authoring. These bills are germane, or the subject matter would accommodate some of these exact changes that you're talking about, and I'd encourage you to work with those offices as you continue to advocate. Thank you. Senator Paxton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You had mentioned the district being uncooperative with your investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that not in and of itself a crime?
It could be, but this is where, when you look at our process of justice in Texas specifically, is unique in that there are some benchmark stop points. The police chief is one of those, where when a crime is investigated by a detective, they work through my office before it goes outside my department. And then it goes over to the district attorney's office, who then, again, washes the investigation to ensure it meets the elements of the offenses, and then they decide whether or not they're going to proceed with it. Federal system's very similar to that, except in reverse, you go to the prosecutor first, you work backwards, if that makes sense. And so I think what you got to realize, there's a lot of bills, Senator, that we don't bog the criminal justice system down with. In this particular investigation that's ongoing right now that we have, where we have 3 educators we've charged, one for three in the same campus. One of them is a principal. I charged him with failure to report, tampering with a witness, and 3 counts of tampering with evidence where they deleted evidence, electronic evidence. We have the suspect in the primary case, which was grooming, which was a singular offense, felony offense. And then we have another educator in the same building that had, we charged with 2 felonies, both grooming as well as the inappropriate relationship. I bring this up to explain the highest bond was the principal. I decided to go after those processes more than those 2 sexual contact and sexual assault cases, because I was trying to send a message across Tarrant County and Dallas County that there is a police chief that's not going to put up a failure to report. We're going to charge it. We're fighting right now with a local church, ma'am, that is trying to stand behind pastoral privilege, trying to say, well, we're not subject to that law. And so the DA makes the decisions based on the teeth in the law, which laws they should enforce and which ones they should not enforce. And that, I think, is somewhat a good thing. But we did not charge because we ended up getting the documents under threat of the HR department.
So, but in the timeline that you laid out in this particular case, the district refusing to cooperate at that juncture point, was that a crime?
Technically, it would meet the elements of offense. If I wanted to file a charge sheet with the district attorney's office, I could have.
Okay, so you tried another way around.
We basically threatened him to get it, ma'am.
Okay, well, because you got a search warrant.
Yes, ma'am. And I had a district judge ready to give me an arrest warrant if I didn't get it.
Okay.
And they tried to deny my search warrant on a Scrivener error, which is laughable. We put the address of the school where this person worked at, and we were serving the search warrant in the HR department. And the HR department manager tried to tell me that my search warrant wasn't valid, and I've been running search warrants for 30 years.
Okay.
It was issued by a Tarrant County judge, criminal judge.
There's a lot of problems here.
That was based on providing the school address and not the home address, or?
The school address we gave the school address where the offense was allegedly occurred, not the address of the school district.
Oh.
And it was ludicrous that was the explanation that they tried to delay. And then the FBI agent revealed who she was.
The actual location instead of the school administration building
Yes,
for the
sir.
district, yeah.
And we had originally put the school administration address down, but the judge said it's more appropriate to put.
I'm with you.
Right, yes.
So,
Senator Paxton.
in fact, just to wrap that up, so you had another idea about how you could acquire the records, and so you pursued that. But if for some reason you hadn't wanted to go that direction, or you didn't have another option, you could have at that point addressed that as a crime, just the refusal to cooperate.
Yeah, and our plan, the detective came to me and laid out the plan, so my plan was immediately called, because I used to work on a federal task force, so I called the FBI. I said, I need your help.
Okay.
My plan was if that didn't work, which we really thought it wasn't going to work that day, we were going to go to the school board in open session. I was going to call out every school board member and bring the news media with me. I threatened them with the news media, and that's what got them, because they'd seen there was a lot of coverage on this particular case because it was a lightning strike moment. 3 educators in the same building committing these kinds of crimes. And so the media really enjoyed the coverage of that. Yeah. And I worked very closely with the media, and so we were going to bring the media with us to the school board meeting if we did not get cooperation. I was concerned they were going to destroy stuff that we knew was there. By the way, the suspect in this particular case, under oath, admitted to this particular situation and the process. So we knew we weren't blindly on a fishing expedition.
Right.
I knew exactly what I was looking for going to that school district.
Thank you.
And they didn't want to give it to us.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Language that's already in law about superintendents having to take certain action. Could you repeat that at this point?
That's correct. Superintendents are required to report to the agency 7 days after an individual separates from a school district when there's evidence of abuse, solicitation, and other allegations. The other thing I heard is that superintendents are also required to do an investigation despite the resignation of an individual. So my understanding is that this person was allowed to go in lieu of termination or any other action. Investigation would have still been required by the SUP.
And I actually have the HR document that we did acquire through that search warrant. So
And so how does a complaint get filed at this point that gets to you?
Any person can file a complaint. I can take a complaint from you today, sir.
I think you're about ready to have one.
Yes, sir.
I'm happy.
And in terms of the penalties, there are penalties right now in law and also SBEC rule, both monetary and sanctions.
I mean, there's monetary.
Could apply.
You get put on the do not hire registry. There's a whole bunch of bad things that can happen to a superintendent that does this.
Yes, sir.
And, Mr. Chairman, the reason why I brought this up, I don't want the audience to believe that there's not already stuff on the books to prevent this, because this is part of what we've been passing for the last number of sessions. And this is abhorrently stupid, injurious behavior by someone that claims to be an education official. And it infuriates me to hear this, because we went through a lot of fight to get these bills passed, okay? And we specifically put in sections about superintendents. And it is well beyond a disappointment, Senator Parker, that in your home county, okay, that you've got a superintendent that's made this type of, decision, because that's not what the law intends. And in fact, there is actually substantial penalties. And that person may lose their license to be able, they're certified. Now, they may still have a job, but they could lose their certification as an educator, and then because of these other expansions we made, as an employee as well.
There is one point of confusion, though, in that when I called the credentialing office of TEA, and spoke with investigators there, I was told that they don't suspend licenses when these things are being adjudicated. So, for example, this principal that we released, I tried to ensure he wasn't going to work around any other children. And it was explained to me by TA officials that he could go get a job tomorrow. And even though we have 5 felony offenses for inappropriate conduct with students on this individual. So I don't know whether I'm hearing
David,
right
would that be
information.
the right answer in this question? I'm pretty sure that the superintendent had a duty to not only report this to TA, but to give you the information under existing laws. Pretty sure the superintendent's quite frankly, has put his license at risk. Filed at this point that gets to you.
Any person can file a complaint. I can take a complaint from you today, sir.
I think you're about ready to have one.
Yes, sir. And in terms of the penalties, there are penalties right now in law and also SBEC rule, both monetary and sanctions.
I mean, there's monetary.
Could apply.
You get put on the do not hire registry. There's a whole bunch of bad things that can happen to a superintendent that does this.
Yes, sir.
And, Mr. Chairman, the reason why I brought this up, I don't want the audience to believe that there's not already stuff on the books to prevent this, because this is part of what we've been passing for the last number of sessions. And this is abhorrently stupid, injurious behavior by someone that claims to be an education official. And it infuriates me to hear this, because we went through a lot of fight to get these bills passed, okay? Like, there is actually substantial penalties, and that person may lose their license to be able, they're certified. Now, they may still have a job, but I mean, they could lose their certification as an educator, and then because of these other expansions we made, as an employee as well.
There is one point of confusion, though, in that. When I called the credentialing office of TEA and spoke with investigators there, I was told that they don't suspend licenses when these things are being adjudicated. So, for example, this principal that we released, I tried to ensure he wasn't going to work around any other children. And it was explained to me by TA officials that he could go get a job tomorrow. And even though we have 5 felony offenses for inappropriate conduct with students on this individual. So I don't know whether I'm hearing
David,
right
would that be
information.
the right answer in this question?
So let me get clarification. The principal was the perpetrator here, or he was?
Yes, I'm going to say he was, because his actions facilitated a second sexual assault of the student once he became aware of it. So as far as I'm concerned, he's also, which I don't think I'm getting ahead of my detectives on this, we're considering a conspiracy case against him for the sexual assault because he knew, did nothing, and then another sexual assault occurred to the same student.
So he could be a conspirator here as well. While, let's just say, he's under investigation by your agency or no law enforcement agency, or while the TEA is investigating.
He is under investigation.
He is currently under investigation.
Yes, so he still is eligible to work in current law. So he even if we started an investigation on him, and I'm not sure who this individual is, he would still be eligible to work today. The committee sub does address this for temporary suspensions and temporary placements in certain situations.
Your honest response, because I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but it just seems to me like 7 days is an excessive amount of time to report something so important.
Right.
And so maybe we should need to revisit that time frame. I think that is way too long. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any other questions? Thank you very much for both of your testimony. And thank you for
the
being
opportunity to
available.
speak
We
with
may
you all
need
today.
Yes, sir.
you, again, and appreciate you.
Thank you for coming forward today. Thank you for your leadership in your current capacity, sharing your story of being a survivor. I want to thank you and all the other survivors that are here. It's so important to hear from you. As someone who represents, as Senator Betancourt just said, a portion of Tarrant County, I'm absolutely outraged. As someone who grew up, went to high school in Tarrant County and Fort Worth, I'm just mortified over to hearing all that you've experienced. I want to absolutely be in contact and talk about these issues offline as well, and just make certain that everyone in the Fort Worth ISD knows how seriously this committee takes this matter, and that we look forward to working with you and all the other victims to make sure we work to find justice. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
that was it the principal superintendent had 7 days to report?
The current law is the principal has 7 days to report it to the superintendent, and then the superintendent has 7 days to report to the agency.
Can you explain to me why we need to give anybody 7 days to take so long? I mean, it seems like it's a long time. Does it? I mean, is there a reason that I can't think of right now?
Well, I can say that legislation, I guess in HB3, we now have a misconduct reporting portal, and so they have the ability to report immediately.
Correct.
So there's no mailing or anything like that required. So I can't think of another reason why they would need 7 days for our process.
And I appreciate your honest response, because I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but it just seems to me like 7 days is an excessive amount of time to report something so important.
Right.
And so maybe we should need to revisit that time frame. I think that is way too long. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any other questions? Thank you very much for both of your testimony. And thank you for
the
being
opportunity to
available.
speak
We
with
may
you all
need
today.
you,
Yes, sir.
again, and appreciate you. Thank you, Chief.
We'll talk.